Hey folks, welcome back. It's the Big Barn Build. Today we are pressing on with our brickwork and we're over on the west side, on the sunny side now that the morning sun's moved over, and we're going to hopefully make a start on this long run to the corner. First important updates. Can't start the day without some puppy time. How's everyone doing? You're getting quite noisy, aren't you? Yes. Another two found their homes at the weekend. We're gonna miss you. Not gonna miss all the whining at night, but... Right, too many distractions. Right, so our membrane, which is meant to only be exposed to weather for about 3 months maximum, has been up now for about 10 months and it's done a great job of keeping the place dry. We battened everything as a way of keeping the membrane tight and windproof, but also thinking that we might need these battens for when we come to put our cladding on, because we're going to brace it back to these. What we don't need is battens all the way behind the brickwork, so we're taking them off. So our battens correlated with where our studs are within the timber frame. What we need to do is put our brick ties in, and they are timber frame brick ties. Now we can see where these battens were. That's exactly where we can put our long stainless ring shank nails into and anchor the brick leaf back to this frame. So we have got a frustrating load of cuts to do at the beginning, just because our footing was a little bit uppy downy. So we've kind of got a new datum, and then we're going to work from that upwards. So therefore all of these are cuts, and that's what Tom's doing the last few now. We'll get that in and then we're on to full. And that just means we're not trying to really reduce our beds unnecessarily to get to a full brick up to the windowsill height. And as a result of that, we've redone our sticks for our gauging and our perps. So we're a good 9 to 10 mil for both. So that's what this stick here is. So for our first couple of courses, just to make sure it's all good, we line this on it. And then obviously once you've done a couple of courses, then you can just plumb down each of the perps. And then this one here, no, the other one, it's got all the beds marked on it. So we can just check that we're going to end up where we want to be. And the morning maths was working out the run, and then we know it's about 40 bricks, which brings it in at 238. 238 is the length of a brick plus a perp. And these bricks they vary a bit, but on average they're about 230. Some are a little bit less. If they're a lot less, then we're keeping them to one side and using them elsewhere. But based on sort of 230 or just under, 238 gives us kind of somewhere between an 8 and a 10 mil perp, which is perfect perps. Down there we've got a telescopic vent that's just giving a direct air supply to a wood burner. So I'm just working around that with some cut bricks, and then we'll decide on where we vent that to. I don't think we need an air brick necessarily. It's only for a 5 kilowatt stove, but it just means that we've got a direct air feed and it's air sealed from the rest of the house internally. Right, it's another big day today. We have insulation starting, but that's going to be a separate video, but we need to push on and get this brickwork done. So I think the guy's coming up to do the insulating from Devon, potentially. So they're not going to be here for a little while. So more on that, but that's our big delivery of the week. So while it wasn't frosty, we wanted to slow things down a little bit. So we've got Hessian up. This side is all on the north, so it's going to take its time to dry up before we brush. Whereas this gets all the evening sun, and actually it was getting quite dry quite quickly. So I'm going to sort that out, see if it needs brushing, and then we're going to crack on, get up a little bit higher, and hopefully get close to the window on one or two of these sides.
Oh yeah, that's ready.
It is ready to go, but we've got no guttering. So if you do anything below here, you get drips down the back of the neck until about 9:30 once the roof's dry, so I might have to forego this side for a minute. Oh, there's that chicken. Where have you been? You shouldn't have been out all night. Could have been foxed.
Hello.
Hey. Lingering on the corner. Nice. Maggie, come on. Right, before I head out into what looks like it's going to be a bit of a wet day and show you how we got on this week with the brickwork, I thought I would give you a few other updates. Bizarrely, Joe thinks we've got enough time in our schedule to fit in a weekly podcast or maybe a fortnightly podcast, and we're trying our best at that. So we've done 2 so far. Recorded, ready to go up. They are going to be over on Patreon to start with until we work through things and work out what we're doing. But if you would like to go and check that out, it'll be on Patreon fairly soon, and we might put the first one up as a preview so you can check that out. But if you want to join us as a member on Patreon, then you can do so and join all these people on screen now on supporting everything that goes on. It helps to cover things like cameras and equipment and microphones and things that break on a daily basis. It really is one of those constants throughout the background that we rely on heavily now as a way of keeping this going, because it is not a cheap exercise to run, and the website and things like that. It's kind of built up into this costly thing. Anyway, thank you to all of our Patreons. And if you want to join them over there, you can do so. And you'll get things like Joe's Monday walk around video that she puts up as an extra video. And also, we, where possible, try and put up our Sunday video a day or so early, so you get to watch that ahead of everyone else. And also, we don't put the ads on those videos, so hopefully you should see it without any interruptions. Anyway, let's head outside and see how all these bricks are faring in the weather. All right, we're at the end of a rather mixed and long week, but it's been productive. with our brickwork. So I'm just going to show you what I've got to get done today. Unfortunately, it's going to be wet, very, very wet today. So I can't do my last 4 courses on this side, which is a shame. I was hoping to get up to window height all the way around. But this side we have done. But as I'm solo, what it does give me is the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the details here, and forgive me if I've already mentioned them in passing. So this process that Dad painstakingly did yesterday, and we've been doing all along, is very time dependent and weather dependent, but we are kind of spending quite a bit of time, and Dad's very good at this because he's a bit of a perfectionist, quite a bit of time getting all of this detail on the mortar right, cleaning up the edges of the brick and then brushing it nicely so you've got that nice little bit of texture and the definition of the brick. And we're kind of just setting it, they're all rounded edges on these bricks, so we're just setting the mortar a little bit back, and you can kind of brush and brush until you're happy, and we've got this nice sort of relief. But this is just about right. So I've got a little finger trowel that you can see these are quite smooth, so after I've actually built a few courses I go back over with this and just point in and fill in all the joints. But now we're a day or two on, I could first, before we brush, just come along and scrape out or scrape off any of the excess that's poking off. And if you do this too early, you smear lime mortar onto the brick, and then you end up with like this white ghosting around the mortar joints, which we don't want. We're really fortunate in that we've got a rustic brick here, which actually has fake splodges of white on it from the way that they're made. I say fake, you know, they're made to look reclaimed, and therefore they add some of this white. It's a bit naff in areas, but in actual fact, we've decided to flip the bricks a lot of times. So here's one here. You can see this white is some sort of paint or something or other that they've put on there to give it an aged look. There's a couple of bits of lime that we've splashed on it. In that case, if there's that much on there, we actually flip that to the back, and if it's got a nice side on the other side, then we use that, because you know there's enough bits of white lime on there from us. Anyway, and then I've got this churn brush which I'm using, and you can see it's pretty worn on the corners from basically what I'm doing. So the way I've been using it is this corner here is worn down quite a lot, so that's kind of a wider radius. That one's a little bit less, and then if I need to dig out a little bit, I use the handle. And I know it's pretty primitive, but actually it works well. It just knocks off the dry sort of bits, rubs out. So it just means we've got less to brush, basically. And then we can come back in with this. So it is a shame that it's a bit wet today. I could do with this being dry, but I don't think it's going to get any better in the next 24 hours. Another thing I've found is some of these bricks, because there's a real blend in here, some of the softer red ones, you end up with a bit of brick dust getting onto your mortar. That's obviously going to change the colour, or it's going to stain the final mortar. So I'm trying to avoid that. So actually a couple of quick brushes first off to loosen off any brick dust is a good thing to do. And then just knocking it, so that's forcing the mortar back a bit and starting to pick out some of the sand and aggregate in there. It's a little way off actually. I think that can wait. That can wait till tomorrow. We've got really high winds tomorrow, but it's wet and windy, so I don't think it's going to be too severe on this. Yeah, I think all this can wait. So I'll give it a few hours, open to the elements, and see what happens. We've got no drips falling on it at least. Right, a few questions been coming in over the previous videos, one of which is the brick itself, what it is. It's called Colmere, I think, which is a place up in Shropshire. That's what the name of this variety or this blended brick is, and we bought them from Imperial Bricks. We spoke about this months ago on a video when we got some samples. There's loads and loads of samples, loads and loads of blends, and whatever you do, don't go off the photos, because any photo can make a brick blend look completely different from another. I think you kind of have to see them in person. And even those small panels don't help that much. What you find is right now this looks like quite a dark red mix. As soon as this dries up, it actually goes quite pastely, even lighter than we pictured. The same as the mortar, that's going to get lighter. So every photo, depending on the clouds, the natural light at the time, the camera settings, you can make brick look entirely different from what it really is, and time of day and things like that. So just don't trust the sample photos when you see customers' images on brick varieties. They're just all over the place. That said, at the end of the day, you've got to pick something, and we thought this was the best match to what we've got down in the lower yard and other sort of adjacent buildings. Right, now it's on to brick ties. So many questions, so many people thought we hadn't done it in the last video. I just didn't think it was that interesting, but share the info. These are the brick ties we're using, and we've probably put more than we need. We've gone every 600 millimeters, which is where every stud is, and they're fixed to the timber frame. And these are specific for a 50 millimeter cavity. So the stainless steel, this cranked sort of shape allows for it to be fixed into the timber frame. And there's enough of this flat section that protrudes onto the brick to be, sufficiently bedded in between the mortar joint. You get a stainless ring shank nail. Just got to make sure that you're going into one of the actual studs. So where our battens are is where our studs are. So we cut the battens off below brick height because we don't need them. They're really only serving the purpose of holding this membrane on for the last year. In actual fact, we don't even need them for the cladding because we're using a different system up here, which you're not going to be able to see because of the angle, but they're down there. And the other thing is we want to make sure that the back of the bricks is cleaned off. So where possible, we're scooping it out. We don't want to get too much in our hands because then you end up transferring that to the face of the brick. So with the trowel, you can kind of get an angle, scoop it up, and then you reuse it. If there's little bits, we just scrape them off. There's a 400 mil deep masonry to masonry cavity at the bottom. So if any little bits drop down to the bottom, it's nowhere near our DPC. But we're just making sure that that cavity is completely clear. It's got nice airflow behind there. Because this is breathable and our wall system is breathable, which is now all insulated, but that's going to have to wait for another day. Now, yes, there are a few in here which, the blacks, we do have those in the other buildings, but I've kept a few back, which we'll use on the other wall a bit more. Any that are really rough, so obviously some of the ones that have been tumbled and they're losing a little bit more off an edge or a corner, again, lower down in the wall, round the corner, makes sense to use them there. The perfectly good bricks are on this front face. I don't really want them showing. So that's the brick, and we went for an imperial size. Now, there are 3 brick sizes I think they did in this particular variety, which was a metric, so a 65 mil brick, and then this one which was 68 but wider, so an imperial size, and then the full-on sort of 75 mil, the bigger imperial. This was in stock already, and it made sense to use it. It's a little bit nicer than the metric in that it looks a little bit more old school, but equally it's not quite as tall as some of the older buildings here. So that's the bricks. The mortar, we did decide to go with the lime putty mortar, and we went with the new London mortar. It's going to be that lighter look that we've already seen down the far end. Now it's dry. It's lovely to work with. Like, it is, for us amateur winging it brickies, it's nice in that you've got plenty of time to work with it. You don't have to worry about batch consistency in colour. The sand, everything was mixed for us off-site in a big, massive mixer, and we know that it's been blended fully, and that the sand itself, the aggregate in here, is identical through all 7 tons of the mortar. So that's an easy win for us, and it actually is speeding things up no end, because you put a mix on, all you're doing is just putting 12-15 shovels of already mixed mortar in a bulk bag into the mixer and just leaving it for 20 minutes just to come back to life a bit. So there's no guesswork, and it's going in nice, and there's plenty of play in it, and it doesn't quite, you can't get a really thin, loose mortar like you might would have a sloppy cement mix and you see people throwing bricks in, you know, one every 10 seconds. It's not quite like that. You do have to kind of work them down a little bit. Apparently you're not meant to knock it with the trowel. So sorry for any of you purists, but the back of the trowel, a few knocks, get it into position, or the rubber hammer that I've got, and they're all in. So the thing we are struggling with a little bit with this wall, and maybe some of you might be able to assist, is the length of the bricks varies within 10 mil, but it still varies, and that can accumulate. Obviously we want our perps, these vertical joints, to line up. So you either want a perfect half bond where your brick ends halfway along the one below it, or you want nice straight perps. So we've gone that route. Therefore, every now and then, this bond creeps off the halfway point a little bit. You know, it might be 10 mil one way or 10 mil the other. But I don't think the eye sees that, especially when all this lightens up, these mortar joints. I think the eye sees straight lines rather than the half, you know, bond of the brick, if that makes sense. And that, so we just chose to do that. Otherwise you'd be hunting through bricks constantly, a bit like your dry stone walling or something, trying to find the perfect brick each time, which it would just mean we were here until, well, next year. So we've got as straight as we can, perpendicular sort of joints all the way down. And then also with the beds, there's obviously going to be variation of the thickness of the bricks, and therefore we've just got to pick an average. We're aiming for this 9-10 mil bed in this instance to get us to the window height. Some of those have had to be knocked down so much so that there's only a 4 mil joint, but that's no different from all the other buildings here, and we've spotted that some of them are really, really narrow joints. As long as the aggregate in the mix is small enough to allow you to kind of bed it right down, I think that's fine. And then this time around we didn't have to rake anything out, so we intentionally left our brick joint, our mortar joint, sorry, between the oak. So remember, this is just to allow a bit of movement in the oak over the coming months. We'll probably leave it until spring, and then we can point that up nicely. We've pointed up against the saddle stone down there, but that will just end up staying like a little shadow gap for now. Let's have a look down the back here. So the next video, or one of the next brick videos, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the costs of the bricks, the mortar, but also some of the labour quotes we had and whether it was worth doing it ourselves. You know, we really need to think about how long this is going to take us. I think we're just about at the halfway point, but there are a lot more bricks down the far end because there's no glass doors or anything like that to use up. It's literally one long run. So we're probably actually only a third of the way through our material. We're halfway around the building. But it's quite a satisfying thing to do. We just want to make sure that this doesn't really eat into all of the autumn months where we really need to be working on the cladding above. But the cladding can't go in until the brick's in. So it's one of those things. But it is hopefully going to save us some money. And it's another skill. It's something to look at in years to come and think, oh, we did that, which is quite nice. And, you know, in some respects, I'm not sure a bricklayer would be up for doing all this detailing, messing around with the lime, unless you're paying them, you know, an extra amount anyway. That's kind of what we're expecting the mortar to end up like now. That's 2 weeks old, and it's had its, you know, tending and curing, so we've taken the hessian off that. Obviously we've got splashback because we haven't got gutter up yet, which is why this lower half's a little bit damp at the moment and a little bit messy. It is a bit of a shame that it's a wet one today. I would have liked to have done that, but that just, we'll have to wait until Monday. Unfortunately, we've had another call off, which is our roofing. I think I might have mentioned it in the previous video that we were getting the Velux put in. We were, then it was a wet day, and now tomorrow it was dry and sunny, but 50-mile-an-hour winds expected, so 6 guys on a roof is probably not a good idea. So they've cancelled again, so we will be sharing with you the Velux install soon, as I will be sharing with you, hopefully very soon, the insulation that went in yesterday, because that was a fun day, or fun 2 days, and we got, well, they got almost everything in. We've got one section to do, so interesting stuff, and hopefully something of an eye-opener or something new for you guys to watch. Now the wise ones amongst you will know that we've already posted that video. So yesterday's video, well, it's a bit of a double header this weekend. You've had 2 videos. and we've already done the insulation. So if you want to see more of that, then you can head over and see that video, and we'll also be sharing an update on a bit of a Q&A around the insulation, because quite a few different queries came up and I want to cover a few topics. We're going to leave it there. Plenty of bricks to get down this week. Hopefully we're going to make our way over onto that east side. Hopefully the weather is going to be on our side. But thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.